What's up guys, Sean here, and today we're going to talk about the Detroit Democratic debate part 1 of 2, the forgettable part that we will forget immediately after part 2 happens. Now, I don't know if you guys know this, but it turns out that every person who's ever had a D next to their name in the history of the world is currently running for president on the Democratic ticket. Now, I know a lot of you clicked on this video for my top tier, pristine, expert analysis of who won this debate, who lost this debate, and whose campaign is completely irrelevant, and they should have probably disappeared a long time ago. But before I get into that, I have a bone to pick with how the Democrats are running these debates in general. Because for some reason, after watching the Republican debates in 2016, the Democrats have decided that the worst way possible for their debates is the way to go. For some reason, possibly because meritocracy is a tool of the white supremacist patriarchy, the Democrats have decided to determine who goes into what debate depending on a random selection. Now, due to the fact that the Democrats and the DNC chose a selection process that is completely void of meritocracy, we have the number 2 and number 3 candidate in a debate where they can't challenge the number 1 candidate in the debate. And this is only made worse by the fact that the number 2 and number 3 candidates, Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, completely agree with each other on virtually everything, and there was about a 0% chance of them arguing over anything. So this entire debate consisted of generic white guy after generic white guy trying to attack Sanders and Warren, only to be rebuffed by Sanders and Warren.
They're running on telling half the country that your health insurance is illegal. It says it right in the bill.
All right, thank you.
And we should stop using Republican talking points in order to talk with each other about how to best provide that health care.
And on top of that, much like the NBA lottery, the efforts to make the debates seem not rigged actually come off as more rigged, because Sanders and Warren are the least establishment of all the candidates, and they're paired off at the kids' table debate, while Biden, who is having a lot of trouble expressing himself on racial issues, has all of the minorities that play into that storyline to go against him in his debate. Now, if you couldn't tell by my earlier analysis, the winners of this soon-to-be irrelevant debate were Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. They both were able to fend off attacks from irrelevant Democrats desperately trying to seek out media attention by attacking them, and they both appeared strong, and Bernie Sanders, who didn't do so well in his previous debate, looked more competent in this debate.
Medicare for All is comprehensive. It covers all healthcare needs for senior citizens. It will finally include dental care, hearing aids, and eyeglasses.
But you don't know
Second of all,
you don't know that,
second
Bernie.
of all,
We'll come to you in a second,
I do know, and I
Congressman.
wrote the damn bill.
Now, in 2 videos I put out early this year about candidates on the Democratic side, a lot of you got upset at me for not touching on very many policy issues. And the reason I didn't touch on policy issues then, and I'm not really talking about policy issues now, is because policy issues are almost completely irrelevant in the Democratic or Republican debates. Donald Trump didn't win the Republican primary being a policy expert. He won the Republican primary because he appeared stronger than the other candidates. If my analysis was based on their policy positions and not their debate performance, then there would only be one clear and unambiguous loser in this round of Democratic debates, and that would be the American people, because all of these policies are pretty terrible. And among the worst policy positions thrown out during the debate was Elizabeth Warren's 2% tax on wealth or assets for the top 1%.
So I have proposed a wealth tax. It's now time to do that. It's time to tax the top 0.1% of fortunes in this country.
Now, that might seem like a weird thing for me to single out amongst all the other positions expressed by the Democratic candidates, but if you've been following me on Twitter, at IamSean90 by the way, then you'll know that my number 1 pet peeve, my number 1 thing that I tell people to worry about, are new types of taxes being proposed by anybody on any side. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, what's a 2% tax on the millionaires and billionaires in our country? They can afford it. I mean, they're rich, so they probably got rich doing something evil, not providing goods and services that you probably consume in your everyday lives that infinitely improve your everyday lives. Definitely something evil. But I would counter that with 2 points. One, I generally think that it is immoral to double tax people's money, presumably if they've already earned that money in income or as capital gains, they've already paid the legal taxes they are required to pay on that money. Now, I know that's not a compelling argument to many of you who think that we have to go out and get the millionaires and the billionaires, but there's another major problem with any new type of tax, is that no matter how narrow any new type of tax is proposed, once it is confirmed by the courts, because it will obviously be challenged by the courts, once it's confirmed as constitutional, that becomes precedent, and that type of taxation will soon be applied to everyone.
To come up with new taxes that are arguably unconstitutional.
Thank you, Congressman Delaney.
Will be fought in court for years.
So while initially it might be just a tax on the top 1%'s assets or savings or wealth, whatever you want to call it, it now is legal for the federal government to extract the money that any of its citizens have already paid taxes on that they may be holding in a savings account or an IRA or a pension fund. And for me, it doesn't really matter if it's just affecting the millionaires and the billionaires at the point where it's implemented, because from that point on, it will then be legal and within the federal government's powers to do it to everyone. And by the way, the same exact principle holds for Andrew Yang's value-added tax that he claims will only be on the automated manufacturing of products within this country. The answer to any new type of taxes is no. That answer should always be no, unless that new type of tax comes attached with a constitutional amendment that repeals the government's ability to tax you in another way. Because you will always, and I mean 100% of the time, end up paying both taxes. Believe me, I live in New York City. I pay city income tax, state income tax, and federal income tax. I pay city sales tax and state sales tax. We pay among the highest gas taxes in the country, the highest tolls in the country, and on top of that, we're gonna have congestion pricing. Congestion pricing that originally was just for the cabs and just for the car services, and not for everyday New Yorkers trying to drive through their own city. So as somebody who's seen this movie before, believe me, any politician proposing any type of new tax, no matter how narrow they promise that new tax will apply, is proposing a new tax for you. Was that a big enough tangent for you guys on taxation? Anyway, big winners for the night, Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. I think they kind of cancel each other out because first of all, they had good performances in the undercard debate. The second debate should be way more eventful and grab a lot more headlines because you're going to have Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, and Julian Castro trying to attack Joe Biden on race. You're going to have Tulsi Gabbard finally have her shot to attack Joe Biden on foreign policy. And you're going to have Kirsten Gillibrand shouting into the void as if anybody cares what she has to say. The big losers for the part 1 debate are all the interchangeable white guys and Amy Klobuchar. And I want to put a special emphasis on the losers of the losers, which are Klobuchar and O'Rourke. O'Rourke had a tiny sliver of a chance to show that he had a pulse, and he completely failed to deliver on that. In fact, you can cut every part of Beto O'Rourke out of this debate, and it doesn't change anything. I can't remember a time where somebody responded directly to him, or he challenged another candidate. He just looked lost, he looked dopey, and it's time for him to pack it in and go home. Amy Klobuchar came off as extremely robotic. All of her answers felt extremely rehearsed, and she was giving me a very serial killer-y vibe, and I really think that somebody should check on her staff, because we all know that Amy Klobuchar likes to abuse her staff just for the heck of it. Pete Buttigieg seemed competent, but Pete Buttigieg always seems competent, and clearly competent isn't doing it for the Democratic primary. So while he didn't say anything stupid enough to win, and he also didn't say anything stupid enough to lose, I predict no change for him. Marianne Williamson, who was the most fun part about debate number 1, came in third, I guess.
What makes you qualified to determine how much is owed in reparations?
Well, first of all, it's not $500 billion in financial assistance. It's $500 billion, $200 to $500 billion payment of a debt that is owed. That is what reparations is.
But the fact that her biggest applause line was about her support for reparations is generally an embarrassment to everybody involved in the debate, and why ultimately the American people, like I said before, in terms of policy, are the biggest losers of the Democratic debate part 1. Also, there's a thing called climate racism, environmental racism, crime racism.
We live in a country now where the president is advancing environmental racism, economic racism, criminal justice racism, healthcare racism,
automatic door racism, medical racism, didn't get my order correct at the drive-thru racism, airplane seats and coach don't recline enough racism,
healthcare racism.
the light in my refrigerator went out and I have to order online the replacement light bulb from Kenmore racism, amongst many other types of racism that Elizabeth Warren is going to address. Anyway, that's all I really have for you guys today. Let me know in the comments down below if you agree or disagree with my analysis. Let me know if you want me to make a part 2 based on the Detroit debate part 2, or you want me to move on to other topics. If you like this video, then show me by leaving a like. You can subscribe for more content. You can follow me on all my social medias. Support me with one-time donations on PayPal or monthly through Subscribestar or Patreon. This has been some top-tier, elite-level analysis of the first debate in Detroit. Till next time.